20th century rolled on, the Gap and its surrounding areas were slowly transforming from dairy farming regions into residential settlements. More families began to reside within the area. In 1930, the number of residents in the Gap were reported to be at just 200. Following the first land divisions in 1956, the population had increased to 1,000 and tripled in 1961. With its growing population, the township was in need of basic facilities, and like many small towns, the local community would often band together to bring its needs into fruition. During the early days of Brisbane's western suburb expansion, schooling facilities were located in Enoggera, Kelvin Grove and Petrie Terrace, much closer to the city centre. In the 1870s, the Department of Public Instruction made the decision to establish schools further outward, including one at Ashgrove. Families living in the Gap appealed to the department's minister to have the school relocated further west in order to shorten the long and difficult journey for their children. Despite these appeals, it wouldn't be until 1910 when the Gap was finally approved for its own school, with land owned by Thomas Purcell bought for the site. The Gap's first school opened on the 17th of January 1912 with 13 students taught by teacher Miss Sarah Jane James, who previously taught at Upper Kedron. The original schoolhouse still stands today as the suburb's preschool, overlooking the aptly named School Road. The Gap's second school would be built 50 years later on the corner of Waterworks and Settlement Roads, opening in 1961. Brisbane's tram network was also expanding, but by 1935 it reached only as far as West Ashgrove, never extending out to the Gap. To compensate, a private bus service was established in the 1930s, operated for many years by local driver Cliff Holden. On the corner of Payne Road and Waterworks Road sits a small row of shops, and this was once the site of the Gap's earliest retailers. In the 1930s, local residents, the Easterns, opened the Gap's first grocery store here, catering to the daily needs of the growing township. Another cluster of shops opened on Glen Affrick Street in 1963. These would eventually extend to the area's major shopping centre, the Gap Village, opening in 1986. As children in the Gap's families grew up, they began to find their own forms of amusement in the area's surrounding natural spaces. Exploring the surrounding bushland, swimming in the creeks, or getting up to all kinds of creative and mischievous activities.
They had functions at night in people's homes, like piano and a piano accordion, and at one stage we were known to carry a portable organ, especially around about Christmas time. And we'd go to the corner of one street and might play, the organ would be played to no one because it wasn't a house in sight, toss a penny, and go left or right until we got to the next corner, and there might be one or two houses around. So that's the sort of fun we used to have out here. Lots of horse riding and stuff like that here, and swimming in the creek, of course. A lot of picnics at Walton Bridge. That was a main picnic area. Still is, actually. When the means of transport became cars, and cars started to come onto the market, the area of Walton Bridge just sort of became a mobile bedroom area at night. And we as kids used to have a great deal of time tilting the vehicles parked there with the stones off the side of the road until we got chased quite often. Yeah.
More formal entertainment arrived with the construction of the Ambassador Hall in St John's Wood in 1928. Locals would regularly attend cabaret performances and dances there until the hall's closure in 1960. Closer to home, the Gap's Anzac Hut on Alara Street became a focal point of social life, hosting countless functions and live music events, and earning a reputation for some of the best dancers in Brisbane.
Where Settlement Road comes up and hits Waterworks Road, if you go straight over the road, which is now Alara Street, that was our local hall. It was fairly dimly lit. It had no linings in it. It was just a bare shell with the grey weatherboards on the outside. It was placed onto Mrs. Mullen Oldhouse's property. She was a great benefactor of the area. That's why the Gap Historical Society, we've had a bridge down in School Road called the Mullen Oldhouse Bridge. We had our school breakups there, wedding receptions. It was the only place that you could actually have anything. The only other hall was the local Methodist church where the cemetery is, and it was only a small church. But it was a great hall. It had the best dancers in Brisbane. It was noted for Brisbane for its dancers. It used to bring bus loads. The buses would run from old Clifford Hughes' bus and come from Ashgrove Tram Terminus to the Gap, and there might be 3 or 4 get off the tram coming to the Gap dance. They were just well known. I was reading letters from soldiers home. In fact, I've got it out on the table there. The soldiers who rode home during the last war, are the dances still going? They give it a save a dance for me when I get back.
For cinema, residents still had to travel further afield, attending screenings at the Ambassador Hall, Ashgrove's Elita Theatre, or Pop's Popular Picture Theatre, now the site of the Red Hill Cinemas. A significant disruption to the picture theatre experience arrived in the 1950s, when new structures began arising on nearby Mount Coot-tha, the transmitter towers for Brisbane's emerging television service. Overlooking the Gap, these towers are highly visible from all around Brisbane, especially at night time with their blinking lights. In 1966, the opening of the Capera Drive-In Theatre on Settlement Road provided another popular film entertainment option for the Gap and its neighbouring suburbs. For the next 3 decades, it drew many crowds from all across Brisbane, but like all of the Gap's neighbouring theatres and movie houses, it too closed prior to the end of the century. Today, a housing estate stands where the drive-in once stood. The 1930s through to the 1980s were a period of sustained growth for the Gap. For over 5 decades, the suburb changed significantly, attracting developers and new homeowners to its lush farmlands. Yet rapid housing developments also sparked concerns about preserving the Gap's green heritage. Residents banded together in protest to keep Mount Coot-tha undeveloped, to stop a major arterial road cutting through the Gap, and to maintain the forests of Mount Nebo and Mount Glorious. The 25,000 hectare land between mountains Coot-tha, Nebo and Glorious was declared as Brisbane Forest Park in October 1977, with a $7 million development plan following 2 years later. This plan included picnic areas, bushwalking trails, and a fauna park, culminating with the opening of Walkabout Creek Wildlife Centre in 1988. Commercial logging and timber getting, once the primary industry of the surrounding lands, was officially ceased in 1999. Residents of the Gap were enjoying a high quality of life within their growing community, while maintaining much of its natural heritage. Like all places, however, the Gap was not immune to broader historical events, natural disasters, or some of the darker chapters of the 20th century. Australia entered the Second World War in September 1939, with military installations established across Brisbane, including 2 at nearby Mount Coot-tha, one near JC Slaughter Falls, and another on the summit. Residents of the Gap would occasionally observe searchlights sweeping the night sky as part of the air defence precautions. Remnants of the Camp Coot-tha base can be found at the current JC Slaughter Falls picnic area, and despite persistent local belief, no artillery was stationed at the summit. A number of visiting United States servicemen were also camped within the areas of the Gap.
During the war, up the far end of Mobile Road and in that area, there was a small American camp up there. Likewise, during the war, on the corner of Peyton Road, there was a tent there with a couple of old Yank soldiers on sentry duty. At school as kids, we were taught how to put out fires by the Yanks. There were a few Yanks up here over the road, and they used to bring tins of ice cream to us at school because we didn't get that sort of stuff.
Many residents of the Gap and its surrounding areas served during the Second World War. In St. John's Wood, a stone cairn beneath a lone pine tree commemorates Flight Sergeant Clifford Hopgood, one of many local residents from the area known to have served. Hopgood was killed during air operations over France in February 1944, aged just 27 when his aircraft was shot down. Despite the risks posed by the occupying German forces, a funeral service was held by the local villagers. This pine tree is believed to have been planted in the 1950s, according to former Gap Ward councillor Brian Hallinan. The Gap's first Return Services League building was established at the former Soldiers Settlement region on Settlement Road. A memorial also now stands at the site of Walton Bridge Reserve, commemorating local residents who served during the war. But beyond wartime, the Gap's proximity to forests and waterways also brought challenges, and the suburb's residents were often at the mercy of many natural disasters. Following a densely dry winter, the Gap was ravaged by one of its worst bushfires in 1944. Triggered by a single dropped cigarette at the Ashgrove Golf Park, the fires quickly spread across the Taylor Range by winds in only 6 hours. Brisbane's horrific floods of 1974 also reached as far as the western suburbs, causing flash flooding and much damage in its path. And in 2008, the Gap made headlines when it suffered one of its worst recorded weather events. On the 16th of November 2008, during heavy storms, a microburst struck the Gap. High winds and heavy rain caused many trees to fall onto homes and streets. Winds had reached up to 130 kilometres per hour, the equivalent to a Category 3 cyclone, and it was rated as one of the worst storms to hit the region in decades. The sheer ferocity of the storm accounted for millions of dollars worth of damages to houses, businesses and parklands, with the area going without power and facilities for weeks.
But you could look in any direction and there's street after street just choked with fallen trees, and late today locals were warned, don't drink the water after a roof collapsed into the local reservoir.
The relief response was swift. Hundreds of State Emergency Service volunteers assisted with clean-up efforts alongside personnel from the nearby Enoggera barracks. Local residents also played a significant role in recovery, clearing debris, assisting neighbours and sharing resources during the weeks that followed, as power and basic services were gradually restored. This moment reflected the Gap's enduring community culture, which had persisted through periods of need and adversity despite decades of change. As the Gap entered the 21st century, attention increasingly turned toward preserving its past. By the late 1990s, efforts were underway to document the suburb's eventful yet often understated history. In 1998, Richard Speechley began publishing a series of books titled Reflections, focusing on the people, places and stories that shaped the area. This growing interest later contributed to the formation of the Gap Historical Society.
That started because I've been doing bus trips for the Gap Garden Club for many years, and there was a group of us sitting around talking one day up at Tambourine about the history of the place, and one of the women said, "Hey Rich, why don't you start a historical society?" So we did, and we've never looked back. To her, she was one of our life members. She wrote books and all sorts of things, but that I've got everything. Here's a bit on the reservoir. The reservoir was actually built 1864 to 1866.
Yeah, that's right. I thought it was 65 around that time.
No, it opened on the 8th of August 66.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, no, it was the first sod was turned on the 8th of August 66.
Although the group disbanded by the end of the 2010s, its work continues through online archives and community groups. But documenting the Gap's history doesn't end here. Across the suburb, many plaques, commemorative stones and murals now mark notable local people, events and locations. Many of these can be found at Walton Bridge Reserve, along the Brian Hallinan Bikeway, and throughout St John's Wood. In 2018, the pillars of the Gap were installed near Walton Bridge, presenting a collection of historical facts and local stories. In more recent years, the Gap has also appeared in popular culture beyond Brisbane. References to the suburb can now be found in film and literature, most notably the animated series Bluey, and Trent Dalton's Boy Swallows universe, later adapted for television. Today, The Gap continues to evolve as a residential community on Brisbane's western fringe. While the suburb has changed significantly over time, many of the qualities that shaped its early development remain evident. From its Indigenous origins, to its role in supporting the growing city of Brisbane, and to its place as a home and destination. Neighbouring the mountains and the Enoggera Dam, the Gap has also maintained much of its green and leafy charm, and has even thrived as an ecotourism destination. The Gap has meant many things to many people over the years, and its story continues to be shaped by those who live here.